Okay. Let's start. Not to be waiting for all the people connecting because our event today is on recording. And just 2 words about our organization and let's start. Okay. Our event today will be for all Ukrainian people who come to Portugal and want to start some kind of business in tech sphere. And today we will start with all of these very complicated questions about the opening new company and sharing the information about the Portuguese clients and finding new investments here. That's why we choose our speaker for today, the expert with the strong expertise in this topic, Pedro Enrikes. Thank you for joining us today. And a few words about the Ukrainian Hub. Ukrainian Hub is the NGO launched in Ukraine. But now we opened a new branch here as an NGO named in Portugal Association. And today with me, Olga Kuzmenko, who is co-founder of Ukrainian Hub here. And we are glad to help our founders to find new information and useful experience and useful advices from our speakers. Okay. Let's start. And Pedro, could you please share with us a little bit intro about your experience, about you, about your company? Please, the stage is yours. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Anyhow, Pedro Enrikes, founder and CEO at Bridgin. Hopefully everyone is hearing me okay. I would love to share a little bit more information. Portugal can be a very bureaucratic country. I believe that it has a lot of interesting things for it. It has been a growing ecosystem. So I'll share the screen in a bit and hopefully everyone can see so that, we walk through a little bit of information. Long story short, that's actually part of the name for Bridgin is to try to create bridges between different countries, cultures, entrepreneurs, businesses that are looking to expand. We exist since January 2020. More specifically, the next couple of slides, they were actually prepared to another event that we had in November, and the world has changed so much since, obviously. I don't think I can begin to appreciate what a lot of you are going through, but I just wanted to leave, a word of support, hopefully praying for, better times and peace and freedom for everyone. Topic for today, let's try with what we know best, which is give you more information about Portuguese ecosystem, bureaucracy, salaries, and a couple of other things. So I'll start with key data, key information about Portugal. Why Portugal? Why could Portugal be interested? And this is a little bit of information. We work with companies throughout the world, more notably North America, Central and North Europe, and a lot of times they end up Portugal is not obviously the biggest country in the world, right? So why would it make sense to consider Portugal to be a relevant position for the plan of company expansion? One of the things we say, and we have been featured pretty well, I guess, across the last few years is the level of democracy. So Portugal is featured as a very high human development index. And we were featured, I think, twice as the 3rd safest country in the world. Now I believe we are actually the 4th, but still pretty decent, pretty on top. So it's, for good or worse, it's a country where not a lot of things happen, and that means that you do not have a lot of external events. And I'm not just obviously talking about military conflict. I'm talking about security on the streets, petty thief, burglars, and all of that. It is fairly safe as a country to live. That has had an interesting impact, which I can tell you, the pandemic that obviously affected the whole world made a lot of people think where they are living and where they want to live. And we notice here in Portugal something that I would not imagine possible 5 years ago, which is a lot of people from a lot richer countries to relocate to Portugal. including North America, people from California, which obviously, there's plenty of, money available there. And so there's not necessarily a problem choosing Portugal because of that. It is because of being a safe democracy and to be a safe country, generally speaking. It is also one of the countries with the lowest cost of living in Western Europe. Again, for good and worse, right? I think for anyone that is potentially relocating, that's interesting. For people living here, that also means that sometimes salaries can be, or the average salary can be a little bit obviously smaller compared to other countries like France, Germany, and others. We have seen across the world the rise in authorization and nationalist movements. Portugal has trailed a little bit behind, and it is good to trail behind on that, right? So we've been ranked as the 7th best liberal democracy in the world. Obviously, it has its flaws, but I think the government tries, although they have sometimes draconian laws, it still does not impact too much on people's freedoms in day-to-day life. Yes, that might have some bureaucracies, paperwork, but at the end they leave people alone, which I think it's good. Other thing obviously is looking at the location where Portugal is. So Portugal history has been of expansion, I guess, through the Atlantic. The history says that you'll find Brazil that they speak Portuguese, obviously, because we kind of went there many centuries ago. But there is good ties today, right? And being the westernmost point in Europe does mean that we are also the closest to both North America and South America in terms of time zones. We do share the common logins with Brazil, which is a big market, and we also have historical ties with Africa, being Angola and Mozambique former colonies, where obviously also share the same language. And obviously, looking on the other way, Portugal can also act as an access point to the European Union, which is combined the largest single market or the biggest economy. In terms of quality of life, and this is slightly outdated, but still most things here keeping true. Quality of life in Portugal can be fairly high, particularly if you have the chance to contribute and work for the global economy, right? So you're not necessarily dependent to the local economy, which again, being the country small, 10 million people, obviously the opportunity for local only businesses, they can only grow so far. But if you do participate in the local economy, for individual residents' perspective, Portugal is very, very good. High quality of living, that the democracy already mentioned, but we have also been ranking with one of the countries with the highest quality of life in the world. Personal happiness, we have a lot of sunshine, people are generally friendly, English proficiency is very high, significantly higher than other Southern European countries, for instance, significantly higher than Spain, France, Italy, and a few other countries. So, all things that also on a personal level might make it relevant. Then, I was just mentioning this. So in terms of English proficiency, we've ranked the 7th, only behind the Nordics and, obviously English-speaking countries. And you should be able to see here Spain, Italy, France faring a little bit worse. And again, when you think international businesses, commonly the language of business is English, and so it is important to have people as well that you can communicate in English and you can use for that. Something else that I usually talk a lot when we are interfacing with, mostly with companies coming from the United States is, when you look at big economic blocks, you look to North America, and both the US and Canada, they are very similar, right? So there's a great amount of consumers, strong economies. But then when we look at the European Union or Europe or European Union, it's also a big economy as a whole, but you do have a lot of different countries and different languages, right? So there's Portuguese, there's Spanish, there's French, there is Italian, there is German, and this is just, starting with the first 5, right? So not only the language is different, laws will be slightly different, although under the European Union umbrella, kind of trying to make them similar, but there will always be differences. And there will always also be differences in terms of the way that companies interface, support customers, develop sales and all of that. So all things to take into consideration. I can also tell you, and tying this back with what is the typical Portuguese mindset regarding that. It is interesting to say that due to historical reasons, where we kind of, we are here on the last bit of continental Europe, right? So our neighbor, it was Spain, and then we had the ocean, right? So that made Portuguese people venture into the oceans, again, 5 centuries ago, so that's on the historic books. But still today, we have a very Atlantic mindset. One of the oldest alliances in the world is between the Portuguese and the British. I would say that if you are here and if you look at news unfortunately, obviously, there's a lot of news about the war in Ukraine, but besides that, international politics and all, you do see a lot of things here that what is reflecting in the US, what is reflecting in the UK, and a little bit what is in Europe. But I can tell me, Portuguese citizen living and working in Portugal, I know more what is happening in the US than what is happening in another country in the European Union, like, I don't know, Belgium, for instance. I can't recall a single note news about Belgium in the last 2 weeks, or even 2 months, if I should say, right? So that tells you a little bit about although Portugal has been one of the founding members of NATO, has joined the European Union, not at the beginning, but a few years back, we also look abroad through the Atlantic quite a bit. So Portuguese does have a very Atlantic mindset. I do think that has another interesting circumstance, which is cities that or city ports, right? Cities that have been international hubs. They usually have significant amount of diversity and tolerance. Although Portuguese population is still very Portuguese, I guess, right? The big majority. So we don't have a lot of expatriates. I do tend to believe, obviously I'm biased, I guess, but I do tend to believe that we are fairly welcoming to foreigners. So another thing to take into consideration. Lastly, here in terms of languages, because we do have a growing expat community, it is very easy, particularly in big cities like Lisbon, to find people that speak multiple languages, right? So they could be Portuguese natives or not, but English is very commonly spoken, but as well, other languages, French, Italian, Spanish, are not that uncommon. I can give you an example. My head of marketing, I don't know if she's listening, but she's originally from Italy, so she speaks Italy natively. She speaks English almost natively. Portuguese is the same. She speaks French and Spanish, right? And I won't say that's like super commonplace. Everyone is like that, but it is not that uncommon. So tying that back with looking at Europe as a market, that means that you can potentially get in Portugal people that have enough language skills to support multiple countries, right? And that's relevant also from a business development perspective, customer support, and if you do want to support a larger market from, well, a more cost-effective location in Western Europe. So moving on, about workforce and how is it skilled. We have fairly good education. Well, we are one of the countries that spends more on education. Spending more doesn't always mean quality, but indeed we have fair decent in terms of skills, and particularly in STEM, right? Science, math, and engineering. It's not bad. Our workforce has been, companies that hire internationally, they usually do like people here in terms of both skills, work ethics, and all of that. So that's usually not a problem. I always like to think why that might be, and so I can tell you that, again, the downside, I guess, of having a smaller economy as well is that we don't have a strong industry, right? So Portugal is more and more a service-based country, tourism, hospitality, and a few other things. IT is getting relevant more and more, right? Because it's a low-cost investment in terms of a service base, right? But we do not have. We have, let's look at, for instance, the car manufacturers. We don't have a Portuguese brand. We don't have a Portuguese brand of cars, for instance. Do we have components factories? One that I think closed up north, and then we had the factory for Volkswagen Group in south, but that's like it. We don't have a lot of industry. What that means is that a lot of people go to school, engineering, and all that, and they end up not having a lot of jobs in the industry, which means some of them went abroad. some of them stay at the university. So we have highly skilled teachers at the university simply because the academia is still seen as prestigious, right? So the best stay there, and the best are not easily hired to other companies because there's no big companies to hire them. Things in technology are slightly different, but if you look at even at biochemistry, biotech, there's any biotech company that wants to get to Portugal, they would be able to hire doctoral graduates very easy and fairly cheap. So I think a kind of a missed opportunity. Anyhow, the radar chart that you should be seeing on the screen, hopefully, does show that investment in development on the workforce in Portugal is fairly good, on par with countries like the US. What we do lack is appeal. Why? I think this has changed a bit, but typically, people in Germany and the US will make a lot more money than in Portugal, right? So the appeal of Portugal is less than that amount. But again, what the pandemic has created is you can now work from Portugal to almost any country in the world, particularly if you are a knowledge worker, that you don't need to go to a factory or any place that you need to be physically. So, the appeal has changed dramatically over the last 2 years. But still, if you absolutely want to maximize the salary, regardless of the cost of living and the location, Portugal will not be the highest salary country for that matters. We'll potentially, I guess, get to this presentation. This is a short quote from John Graham Cumming, which is a CTO at Cloudflare, that they do have a big office in central Lisbon. And they've been really successful here and have grown the hub quite a bit. Now, again, to recap for anyone that have joined a little bit later, this precise presentation, these data points were collected, I believe, for a demo or presentation we did in November. We, obviously didn't know what was in the future in the cards, but Portugal has ranked, in my experience, again, working with global companies, that a lot of times when international businesses are looking, and again, specifically in tech, they are looking to hire knowledge workers, software developers, architects, all of that. A lot of times, Portugal has ranked against Poland, Romania, and Ukraine. The data points that you'll see here are for things that at the time, we defined to get a little bit notion. Again, obviously, this is a presentation of us trying to convince why Portugal is better. So, it might tend to be a little bit biased. In any case, just quickly through it. Size of the talent pool, that's relevant, right? So this is from an Atomic, which is a VC study. They told at the time of the study that Portugal had around close to 100K professional developers, which is roughly the same size of the talent pool in Romania. But it is half of the one in Ukraine and a third of the one in Poland. So, smaller country, obviously smaller total talent pool. However, it is interesting to see that almost 1% of the population works in tech, right? So that, it's both the side that, there's obviously education for it and people can get into that career. Competitive talent, competitive rank, Portugal does fare not amazingly, I guess, but potentially a little bit more than the other countries. Skills of current workforce, availability of skills, a little bit better as well. Expenditure of government in education has also been significant. European Innovation Scoreboard, Portugal has also fared fairly well. Business schools, Portugal is, I guess, not known by having a tremendous amount of business schools, but it's not bad. Again, for when you think for country size, not bad at all, right? Poland, obviously, it's a bigger country. We do, by the way, we do compare very similar to Poland in a lot of things. And this is one. If you see here the number of schools, it's not that far off, but Poland, it is a bigger country, right? And so, by size, Portugal does have a pretty decent performance. Language skills that we already talked to, specifically English in this ranking, Poland was ahead of us just slightly, but language skills as a whole, beyond English, Portuguese actually fared a little bit better. Again, it is not just English that we'll find in Portugal, it is also Spanish, often French, and a few others. Other things, infrastructure. So political stability has been, for good or worse, has been not bad in the last few years. Again, the liberal democracy already talked to, favorable immigration laws, and this is relevant, so I'll just delve a little bit here. Historically, Portuguese has been fairly welcoming to expats, both, I believe, the population, also the government. Now, this does not mean that the bureaucracy, it is easy, it is not, but the mindset is that, we don't want to, not let anyone in, or we don't want to put people, expel people from the country. No, that never happens. You can, this is not a recommendation, but even if you come to the country, to Portugal, with the tourist visa, you overstay your tourist visa, and you just find a job, start working, nobody will kick you out of the country unless you get in problems with the law, right? There's actually, and I don't think this exists in a lot of countries, there's actually a path for people that kind of stayed in the country and became illegal to become legal. It is lengthy, can take 2-3 years, again, bureaucratic, delayed, slow, but there is a path too, which is not, I feel, very common in other countries. In terms of global peace, already talked a bit, infrastructure in Portugal, broadband, and a few other topics. It's again fairly good in Portugal. I sometimes hear, people we talk to, for instance, talking about the price of broadband internet in Germany, and it feels like Portuguese is actually cheaper and better. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't properly done any proper test in Germany, but it is interesting and curious. Other things, scale up companies, again, per capita is a very good number. We say that we have 6-7 tech unicorns. I would argue maybe we have 1-2, because are they really Portuguese? Cases come like Farfetch. Yeah, the guy is Portuguese, but he started the business in the UK. So is it really a Portuguese startup or unicorn? Arguably yes, arguably not. Depends on who you're asking. But that's one. Talk Desk, also founded by 2 Portuguese, but they went straight out of college to San Francisco. So is it a Portuguese unicorn? Well, they do have a lot of people here, hired workers and contributors, but again, still, it's not bad numbers. Other things here. Labor market flexibility. It isn't great. So we do have a lot of regulations. Comparing to anyone that has experience in other markets, Portuguese historically, I think, drawn a lot about its laws from France. And yes, France is very protective of employees. I don't think Portugal gets to that extreme, both positive or negative, depends on your thoughts, but it is common to that, right? So comparing to more liberal countries in north of Europe, or particularly comparing to North America, it is very, very different, right? I'll give you a quick example. In Portugal, if you are a permanent employee, after the probation period, it can be very, very hard for any employer to let the employee go. Very hard. Reasons for it is, obviously the person started to not show up for work. Well, that's a reason. He beat someone, he stole something. That's obviously a reason for being let go. But other than that, either the company is like going under and you're firing everyone because you're kind of closing shop, or at least reducing significantly the work pool, or it will be very hard to fire someone. It's like, you can't fire one person. Yeah, the company is going under, so you fire half of it. Workable, acceptable, I guess. You need to pay indemnification, but it still can work. But fire that one person that is slacking, very hard. Okay, so employment laws, again, for good or worse, are very protective in Portugal. Other things here. So obviously we are in Euro zone, so we have euros, right, which is, I guess, a strong currency. It does not enable us to tweak, to try to cope with sometimes economic downturns, to bump up and play with the financial instruments. But well, at least we have, I guess, a strong currency. GDP per capita as well, it is higher. I do think that Poland has another country as well. So although we are higher, we are not in the best progress. Portugal has grown above European average for a lot of years now. So I think our politicians could be doing a better work, but again, it is what it is. All right, so changing gears here a bit. I would love to talk to you a bit about employment costs, which, give me a second, I reckon is very, very different from country to country, and particularly from Ukraine. And I'll tell you this because we obviously more recently start to get a lot of requests from Ukrainian companies that are looking, to relocate people here. And it is a bit of a shock sometimes how high our taxes could be. Portugal does have a fairly good social state, public hospitals are not bad. It is still the go-to solution if you have anything that is serious diseases. If you have a non-serious disease, you need to see a skin thing or see your eyes. Maybe you need to go to the private sector so that you don't wait 2-3 years. But life-threatening things, you go to the public hospital and you get well treated. And again, we work a lot as well with the US market. The type of news that you don't have money to pay the ambulance, so you kind of don't get treated, that doesn't happen in Portugal, okay? So the state is good enough to cover the basics. The education is also pretty decent. Downside, the government is not efficient with the money, and it does spend money on things that are important, but also spends a lot of money on things that are maybe not important, and taxes are high. So let's jump into a breakdown. First, actually, a salary benchmark. So this was from data from Robert Walters from 2021, mostly tech roles, but this will give you a little bit of a notion. The pandemic has caused something which is salaries for tech workers, knowledge workers that can work from any location. They have been trending up and kind of averaging, so irrelevance, and they have been decoupling from the cost of living of the country, right? So for a lot of companies, it doesn't matter if you're in Portugal, Spain, UK, Switzerland, whatever, they will, kind of pay you the same, which has the benefit of, well, if you are in a country with a lower cost of living, you end up having more, money out of pocket in the end of your expenses. Regardless, what we are seeing is, a senior front end is easy on the 60K gross annual salary, and that's what you see here. I won't go into detail for all of this, but that's very common nowadays. What I do want, and I think that's a little bit more relevant, is okay, gross salary, got it. Now what? What does that mean in terms of net, and what does that mean in terms of total cost of the creation of the job? So this simulation here is for a 50K gross annual salary, right? And we'll walk through decomposing this on all the different parts. So 50K gross annual salary. The first thing that exists is that in Portugal, there are 14 months. Not 12, we have 14 months. Now, jokes aside, the salary needs to be calculated or divided by 14. There's obviously the 12 months for every month in the year. Then there's 2 other months, one for holidays and another for Christmas, which traditionally they were paid in June for holidays and in November for Christmas. And the idea is that these made people have some savings, some extra money so that they can spend in vacations and on Christmas gifts, I guess. We had an intervention, for those that don't know, we had an intervention from FMI and the World Bank and all of that in the beginning of the last decade, so 2011, 2012. And so a few things changed and we are still kind of, adapting, I guess. So at that point, it has become possible to receive, instead of receiving in 14 payments, receiving 12 payments, but still, there are still 14 months. They just divide the 2 extra months in 12 and pay a bit of it every month, right? So you end up having 12 pay slips and not 14, but it's the same math, right? And when you look at the work contract, you need to put there the monthly gross salary that will multiply by 14 to calculate the gross annual salary. So that's the first thing that is a quirk, I guess. The other thing is meal allowance. So meal allowance in Portugal is that this is not absolutely mandatory, but it's so commonplace that everyone does it by a good reason, exempt from taxes. And we have so many taxes that it's good that we do have a break once in a while. So meal allowance is the idea that the employer can pay an allowance to employee for him or her, to go eat lunch without being subject to taxes. If I'm not mistaken, the limit that is not subject to tax is 7.5 633 euros. Not long ago, it was 6.83, so that's why the simulation has it. These can be paid per worked day. So on an average month, you'll have 21 working days. So that would mean, 683 times 21, and then times 11 for the year. Why 11? There's 12 months, yes, but 1 month is of vacation. So if you're on vacation, you don't work, you don't get meal allowance, right? So the number here you see on the far right, 1,649, should be 6.83 times 21 average working days per month times 11 working months per year. This is just the beginning. Now, employer fees and perks. All right, so on top of this, this is the gross salary, and we talk a bit about the net, but just the gross. You need to add on top of it, the big lion cut is social security payments. Employers need to pay on top of gross salary 23.75% on top of gross compensation. Okay, so for those 50K gross annual, there's 23.75% of that on top that needs to be paid to social security, and that, as you can see, is 11K, almost 12K, which is a lot of money, right? Additionally, there's something else I introduced a few years back, which is social security trust fund or compensation funds. The idea here is that if the company goes under, you can have some money that this fund gives back to you, to compensate for that. So, on a yearly basis, another 500 euros cut, which is 1% of the gross salary. Then you have mandatory requirements, which is, one of them is labor insurance, right? So every employee in Portugal needs to have a labor insurance. This is one of the highest liabilities you can have as an employer. Do not ever employ anyone in Portugal without having a labor insurance. If something happens, right, he gets, serious accident, you'll need to pay his salary for the rest of his life as a compensation. So this could be a huge toll on any company. You pay the insurance, and the insurance takes care of it in case of accident. The other thing that is required is a medical exam. So anyone that is joining a company needs to go to the doctor. The doctor needs to say you're fit for work. Feels draconian, but it is what it is. You need to do it. This is usually once every 2 years for people under 50 years in age that work on a traditional office or shop or factory. By whatever reason, the Portuguese government decided that if you are working from home, you actually need to do this every year. Why? No idea, but true. I think it has to do with mental, problems, people feeling isolated. It just feels, I don't know. Anyhow, moving forward. So other things that companies need to provide to their employees is training. So companies are required to provide training to employees. And if you can't provide training, you need to compensate them so that they can seek training outside. If you do provide training, typically the training needs to be provided by a company that is certified by a local training or agency governmental body called GERT. So again, a little bit bureaucracy, can't be just any training. You can provide any training. It's simply that you don't fulfill the mandatory requirement if the training is not certified, right? Even though there might be something that is not certified, something on the cloud, AWS, whatever, that is probably better, but it isn't certified, doesn't fulfill the mandatory requirement. Lastly, on the right, not mandatory by any means, but is getting more common and common, is private health insurance. Private health insurance in Portugal is still fairly inexpensive, again, comparing to other countries in the Western world. And so it can average around 40 to 50 euros per person per month, which, comparing to sometimes 5 to 10 times that in the US, can feel quite affordable. And this is becoming more and more a recommended perk that employees do expect. So in recap, for gross annual salary of 50K, and just talking about mandatory stuff and taxes, the total cost of the job would be around 66K. This does not include laptops, smartphones, food, car allowances, workplace, office space, any of that. On the downside as well is, okay, let's look at net salary, right? Okay, this is gross, this is employment taxes on top of it. How much is their net? There's two big items here that people get on their pay slip. There are taxations that are, paid to the government. One is Social Security. So yes, there is both an employee component of Social Security and an employer component of Social Security. The employee is 11%. So employee 11%, employer 23.75. So 34.75% of the cost of creating a job is to pay for Social Security, a third lot. Now, the other thing is personal income tax. Personal income tax is depends on individual circumstances, meaning, first of all, it is a progressive income tax, so lower salaries pay less tax than higher salaries, and then it also depends on family circumstances. If you are single with kids, you will pay less than if you are married without kids, for instance, because a household with two people making money, more money available, and higher income bracket tax. The simulation we'll see here is for people that are married, and by married, I'm assuming that both people in the household are working, because if only one is working, is actually better, because you do get a little bit tax break there. It's not better, I guess, because they're not earning, but for tax purposes, I guess it is a lower rate. But the simulation here is for married with two children. Okay, so what you see is, if we look at the 50,000 gross annual salary that costed around 66 total employment, the net amount that people take per year is 31. So yeah, 66 in cost, 31 net. I don't want to demotivate anyone, but it is what it is, right? So, and I think it's important that people realize this. There is, however, one good news that potentially some of you might benefit. Portugal has a non-habitual tax regime, which is a special tax regime that anyone that has not been a resident in Portugal, a tax resident in Portugal for the last 5 years, and this includes Portuguese citizens that have been abroad, includes people from other nationalities, they can apply to this NHR regime, and that caps for 10 years that tax regime to 20%. I know 20% still feels a lot, but trust me, the high, if you make 100K a year, you will be paying 40-something% in income tax. Okay. Yes. This is, by the way,
We start crying.
I know, again, it's a lot. This is not very different from other countries. If you go to Spain, France, US, Canada, it's not, I understand that it is different than other countries, but it's not that uncommon, in Western European countries. But, my key goal here is just to provide you that information so that this does not come as a bad surprise. So 20% non-habitual resident, if you have a higher salary, it's a very good deal. I wish I could have that for myself. I need to get, I guess, 5 years abroad and then return. Anyway, moving forward. So this is just another quote. Salsify is another company that started operations in Portugal, I think 2018 or something like that. Really quickly, and then I want to open for discussions and be available to take questions, but really quickly on what Region actually has been doing. So first of all, our vision has been about, supporting companies that want to expand operations throughout. We believe that instead of being everyone on an office or everyone fully distributed, the ideal is somewhere in the middle, which is think hubs, think teams. Okay. Why? Because you can have team members. You can have, a team of 5, a team of 10, 20, whatever it may be, around the city in different locations, but it does enable that co-workers meet each other. Right, so the sense of belonging, the sense of culture for company, I believe, is a better way to scale rather than hire throughout the world, where you can have a team with someone from, I don't know, Uruguay, Nigeria, Australia, whatever, and there's talent everywhere, obviously, but people will be also very different, right? And so it's hard for creating a sense of culture. It's not impossible, but it's harder. And I've actually, before founding Bridgin, that's what I was doing. I was building fully distributed teams, remote teams, and amazing contributors throughout, but people felt like freelancers, contractors. They didn't feel like a member of a team, right? Which is hard when you don't spend time, you don't be face-to-face with your team, your coworkers. And so that's the vision and what we want to support. Just a few faces, I'll skip through this. Essentially what we've done is, you want to see the faces? Okay, I can go back to the faces. So Pedro, myself, right there on the left, my co-founder, Claudio Menez, both of us, we've been in technology for over 15 years. Nikita has been with us since almost the beginning, and his experience is more in corporate finance. He worked on Big Four. I guess what we bring to the table is everyone on our team is fairly senior, right? Have been around, very international team as well. Beyond these faces, there's more people. And so we like to engage with entrepreneurs, business owners that, need not just that, feedback that typically a lawyer says, right? But actually a more comprehensive understanding about business, right? How to build international business, how things operate in another country. That's relevant, right? And obviously our understanding is more towards tech than other industries. But having that understanding about how things operate, what is the market, salaries, taxes, how other players act in the market, how to have a competitive offer if you're trying to hire someone. This is what we really excel. And so most of our experience is around that, and that's what we do. Now, getting a little bit more precise into services, we have two main services that we are doing. One is I would call soft landing or company as a service. So that means is if you want to incorporate a company in Portugal or a subsidiary for your holding company abroad, we can totally do that for you. We have lawyers in the team, we work with chartered accountants. Again, our view is, my background is software engineering, right? So I tend to look at problems from a mathematical efficiency standpoint. And I have a little bit of problems sometimes with lawyers that their financial incentive is to tell you the truth or the facts a little bit at a time, because they bill you by the hour, right? So they have zero financial interest and give you all the information at first, right? We want to be completely different than that. We do not keep information hostage. That's not our goal. We want to make information available, easy. Our model is if you want us to help you do it, obviously you need to have an agreement and all, but not keep information hostage. That's not our goal, right? I think that's just creating barriers of entry, and actually that's bad for people not investing in the country, because there's barriers of entry. There's things that you don't know. You just get overwhelmed by bureaucracy, right? So that's not what we want to do. We want to make information as available as possible. We try to create good content, ebooks, and all of that. What we want is, if you do want us to help you, hand in hand do stuff, we can. But obviously then we'll charge you for that. So one of the lines of businesses is company creation and management. So this could be something like, hey, I want to create a company in Portugal. I need to understand benefit packages, taxation, how to prepare a work contract for an employee. I want to employ something like that. And then I don't know how to process payroll. We take care of all of that, right? So we'll prepare bilingual work contracts. We can review it entirely, explain everything. We can process payroll, pay employee taxes, pay corporate taxes, make some recommendations in terms of even things like, again, this is very different from country to country. Let's say that you have a team in Portugal and the team wants to go out for a team lunch. Is that expense, the lunch, payable by the company? It is, if there's an invoice with the company VAT number on it. So a simple paper doesn't work. It needs to be a paper with the VAT number on it, right? And there's so many small things like that, right? Once you start to get the ball rolling and you get familiar, it does become easier. But until you get to that point, obviously we know all of that. So that's one big line of business. Another one is employer of record. So employer of record that builds on top of PEOs, personal employer, professional employer organizations, is basically the idea that you end up outsourcing the employment, right? So let's face it, if let's say that you found a contributor in Portugal, you won't create a company just to employ one person, right? Doesn't make sense. So that's a good solution for employer of record, right? We can employ that person on your behalf. Obviously, we charge for that. But that means that you can employ someone locally, compliantly, and I'll get to that in a bit. And we take care of everything, all the bureaucracy. Our experience is, as we work with companies and as they found success and continue to grow their operations in Portugal, they get to a point where, yeah, this was great, but now I want to have the subsidiary. So we just got on a local magazine about one of our first customers, Design People, from Arizona in the US. So they started with us, I think, November 2020. And we started with 2, then 4, and then they got to the summer of 2021 and say, look, Portugal is everything that you told it is and more. We are convinced. We want to continue to invest. We are now, we want to go and create a subsidiary to continue our growth. And we did that. So we started at the OR. We mitigated essentially their risk, their business risk, all the unknowns. Will this work for me? How can I find people? How do I pay tax? Don't need to worry about that. We take care of it, right? And when you feel things going and you focus on building the capacity, hiring the people, you eventually get to a point where, okay, this is working, right? I want to kind of invest more. You might want to get a subsidiary. We can help with that. So I actually think, I'll get to that. Yeah, I'll get to that now. Then I'll go back. Sorry for the back and forth. This is what I'm talking about, right? So when you grow a presence abroad, it might make sense for you to mitigate your risk as a business, to focus on finding the capacity, finding the people you need to hire, and we can employ them on your behalf. And then when you get to a steady state, you say, okay, this is working, let's incorporate a subsidiary. So this is a plan that we have run with multiple companies that, at least hopefully for them made some sense, which is, find the capacity first, find people, employ people, we help employ them, we take care of all the legalities, and then if and when you're ready, you can insource them. Key things here. First, and I'll go back here to this one. So what you see here is that our goal is to act as your eyes and boots on the ground, right? So we want to be almost your interim country manager, which is give you all the expertise about the Portuguese market. We are obviously, there's a lot of things that we won't do, right? We are not PR experts, but we know people that we have worked before, there are, right? So if you tell me, look, I want to create a massive PR campaign, I want to get my brand recognized in the Portuguese market, we will tell you, we will get you a quote from partners that we work in the past, right? So the knowledge about who do I get to? We have that, right? And our goal is always to have multiple providers for every single box that you see here, so that you have options, you understand the market, right? And we did that for you. Obviously, things here are, banks. We aren't a bank, obviously, but we know banks, right? So we know which ones work maybe a little bit better than others with experts and all of that. And the same thing actually with recruiters and talent providers. So Bridging is not a recruiter, but we do end up working with companies that ask us, hey, can you help us find people to hire? What we do is we work with our recruitment partners, they find the people, we kind of interface, we help everything move along, and well, then a lot of times people do get hired. But there's a lot of other stuff here, like if you need events, if you need specialists for grants and incentives. We obviously know most of the grants and incentives available, but it's a hard work just to be on top of every call that opens every day. So we use partners for that instead of doing ourselves. Anyway, going back then to this plan, the other thing I want to mention is I alluded to earlier about the employment and the risk. Why do you want, if you find someone in Portugal, you want to employ this person, why do you need to put them under an employer record than you are, instead of, just be a contractor or whatever? So again, most Western countries have been tightening up the regulation around false independent workers, okay? So the story goes, if you work under someone else's order, you're not an independent worker, you are a dependent worker, right? So if you start, if someone told you, you start at 9, you have 1 hour lunch, you finish your day job at 6, and you'll do this, you'll have a meeting with this manager and he'll tell you what to do. That's not independent work, you're dependent. Someone is telling you how to do the work, when to start, when to end, okay? An independent worker, on the other hand, would be, you know, like, I don't know, an architect, where you tell, hey, I want to build a house. I want 2 rooms, a pool, some trees in the back, and the guy, whenever he wants, he starts drawing. He still obviously needs to present you the thing, but he does it on his time, not with the direct supervision of, oh, you need to draw this in this page in this way, okay? So false independent workers, and it is easy to prove a false independent worker. So if you work on a schedule that is not dictated by you, you're a dependent worker. If you work with the working tools provided by someone else, you're a dependent worker. There's 2 other reasons. Let's see if I can remind. Another signal is financial dependence, which is actually independent, but I'll get to that in a second. So, you know, it's, location. So with remote work and, you know, work from home, whatever, this has become a little bit more hard to prove. But if you go to an office or a factory every day, you're a dependent worker, right? If you're working from home, so this kind of became a little bit harder to decide. So Western governments have been tightening that up a lot. For instance, the UK passed not too long ago IR35 that really you know, makes it a little bit aggressive. Portugal as well. And the key idea here is, you know, you need to be, the government wants people to be employed and paying taxes, obviously. Not to say that you being an independent worker, there aren't avenues to work as that. Again, if you are sometimes a lawyer, an architect, those are good examples of independent workers. You still need to pay tax, obviously, and you actually have something that is interesting. Even on professions that there's not a situation of false independent work, one of the things that typically, because, you know, when you're a dependent worker, you have a salary, you have a contract, you make the same salary every month. It's predictable. You know, the government knows how much you need to pay in taxes. If you are an independent worker, you can have 2 customers today, no customers tomorrow, right? So how much do you pay? What's your end of the year bracket for income tax? It's unknown, right? So it's, you know, there's a little bit more possibilities. I won't say to dodge tax, that's not it, not tax avoidance by any means. No, but it's a little bit hard for the government to keep track of stuff. So they don't want to, that exists too much. One of the interesting things is even on true independent workers, if you have financial dependence, and financial dependence reads as, let's say that you are employing, again, let's go with an architect, and you have so much work for that architect, maybe you're building, I don't know, multiple houses, fractions, whatever. If you as the payer, as an employer of that independent worker, represent above 50% of his income on a given year, you need to pay Social Security for that person, although he's an independent worker. Okay, so this tells a bit about the climate and the change. I can also tell you that if you find by the government that you have a false independent worker, so someone that is proven to be a dependent worker but classified as a false independent worker, fines go up to 60K. So not nice, right? So that's why most of the companies that we work now, they don't want that, and that's key reason why employer of record exists, because you end up not having that responsibility because the person has a work contract, is paying taxes, right? So on the eyes of the law, they got what they wanted, which is taxes, let's face it. Anyhow, moving on here. So I won't get into too much detail. Maybe if there's questions, obviously you can ask. But what we've done in terms of subsidiary creation, for you to have an idea, if you talk with people, you'll find lawyers sometimes that will tell, oh yeah, you can create a company in Portugal in hours. It's not false, but it's not really true, which means, can I create a company, me, Portuguese citizen with all the documents and stuff, create a company in a matter of hours? I can if I choose a pre-built company, which is like a pre-registered company that will have a name like, I don't know, Sitting Monkey or Crazy Stare or some random worded company name like that. Is that what, you know, big holding company wants? Absolutely not, right? So in practical terms, you don't create a company in hours, you don't even create a company in 2 weeks. And what you need to do is, first, if you are an entity, you know, foreign company that is looking to create a local subsidiary, the first thing you need is to get a fiscal number for the parent holding company that is foreign, have a tax ID for that company in Portugal. The second thing you need to do is get the name that you want to create the company with, which will probably be a variation of your company name, right? You need to register that. And both these things typically take 1 week. So 2 weeks already passed. Okay, then you are ready to actually start the incorporation process. You need to prepare articles of incorporation, bylaws, who is the managing director. If the managing director and the shareholders are not in Portugal, you need to procure a fiscal number for them as well. You know, so depending on the complexity of the org structure, might take a little bit. Furthermore, if you are not, if you are in European Union, I don't know actually how it happens with Ukraine, to be honest, but if you are in the European Union, you don't need a tax representative. If you're outside the European Union, you do need a tax representative. So you need someone that acts as tax representative in Portuguese soil for you. So this can easily get a little bit more complex. From our experience, give yourself at least 6 weeks, at least, to create a company. I can tell you, one of the biggest companies we work with, they wanted to do the incorporation with a big law firm, not with us. It took them 4 months. We created at the same time a smaller company in 6 weeks, precisely in 6 weeks. So, you know, I'm not wanting to talk crap about anyone, but, you know, when they bill you by the hour, guess what? They take time. The second kind of arrow that you see here, if you have people that you want to onboard, just the effort, one thing is to have a subsidiary created. The other thing is to be ready to employ people. If you recall, we talked about you need to do medicine at work, need to have insurances. So, you know, give yourself 4 weeks to have all of that set up, figured out before someone starts, okay? And from that point on, it's just ongoing payroll and other admin stuff. You know, this is things that we do, you know, from company incorporation, you know, get all the fiscal numbers, name admissibility, legal entity. You need to select activity codes for your company, articles of incorporation. You need to open a bank account, open activity with tax authorities and social security. You need to register end beneficiary. This can be very, very painful, by the way. End beneficiary is a European law, which is the ultimate beneficiary. So if you have a complex org structure, the final owners, right, the people that sometimes own the holding, that owns another holding, that owns another holding, that owns an operating company, you need to be identified on a document, right? This is anti-money laundering. So yeah, can be complex if the org structure is very complex. Other than that, you know, the typical ramp-up ops, more tactical is, you know, you need to find the insurance broker, you need to find, you know, you need to review most likely the work contracts, understand what is in there, find the, you know, where do you do those medical exams needing for people to start, the benefits, you know, the meal allowance, other benefits, working tools, right? You need to offer, I know, laptops or whatever. So, you know, ramp up of ops just for employing people. There's a few things. It's less bureaucratic. It's more like, you know, stuff that needs to be done. Ongoing admin, you know, payroll, financial tax compliance, and local representation. This is also a topic, you know, just processment of letters. Although a lot of things Portuguese government already makes available in English, most of it will be in Portuguese, unfortunately, right? So if you don't speak Portuguese, there's a very good probability that will receive letters in the email in Portuguese that you don't know if it's absolutely rubbish or actually something important. So that's something that we can help as well. Right, this is, you know, just another quote from a customer. I'll skip through that. And I guess, you know, back in November, I thought that Portugal could provide some opportunities for Ukrainian startups and founders. Obviously, now the reality is much different. Not that there aren't opportunities, but I think there are other concerns as well, obviously, for everyone on the call. To sum up, Portugal has been historically fairly stable. I won't say very efficient, but at least stable. You can count with the inefficiency, right? It's, you know, somewhat predictable. I like to tell, you know, my team and sometimes, you know, my customers that it's not about how many hoops you need to jump through, is knowing that there are hoops to jump through, right? And you just forecast, you plan for it, right? What you don't want is that suddenly someone puts another hoop in the middle that you're not prepared to. Portugal does offer an interesting location between Europe and the United States. Talent, as we saw, is very good if you're looking to hire people here. Culturally speaking, you know, is Western cultures, English skills, welcoming nature, I believe. You know, so I can add something that I think you'll appreciate. Portugal, once in a lifetime. I think every nation has had its mistakes, its wrongdoings in history. Obviously, Portugal history 5 centuries ago was not necessarily the greatest. You know, we exploit obviously Latin America and Africa. It's in the past now, long in the past. Portugal probably 2 centuries ago gave up of being, you know, any relevant country in the world. Very honestly, okay. It's like if you compare even Portugal with France and I would say Spain to a less amount, or the UK, right? Why the UK left the European Union? Because they think they are a superpower, right? They can stand alone in the world. They can't, right? France sometimes has these feelings of they are an important country in the world. Maybe they are a strong economy, but Portugal has none of that. Nobody here thinks we are very important in the world. No, nobody cares about us. But, you know, with that, I actually think there's good things. People don't care about you, so they let you be. You know, you can just be, nobody notices you and you just do your stuff, which is actually, you know, good. Again, Portugal is fairly safe. I don't, you know, with after 9/11 in the US, with the terrorism attacks and all of that, Spain had it, France had it, Germany had it, nothing happened in Portugal. We got people here planning attacks that got arrested, right? So it feels like things are so laissez-faire, so calm, so nothing happens that even kind of terrorists come here to plan for stuff. No, look, I'm trying to joke with it, but it is true that it is stable. It's calmer. It's a little bit, it's still European Union. You know, we are part of the bloc, so we have the benefits of Euro, you know, interconnectivity, English skills, good schools, you know, it's good to live, but it's not, it doesn't bring, you know, sometimes the craziness of countries that, you know, have a lot of antagonists. I don't think any country in the world kind of has a bad relationship with Portugal. So, you know, that could potentially be interesting more from I guess a neutral perspective. Well, this is lastly my contacts, Pedro at bridging.pt. Hopefully this was insightful. I don't know if there's questions here or through Zoom, but yeah.
Thank you.
Let's move for the Q&A session. Could you please move to the one place here?
Okay.